What's up, guys? Lucas here, and today I'm going to be talking about the 2020-2021 NBA offseason. So yesterday I released the Houston Rockets 2020-2021 offseason recap, and I'm going to try to do one for every team before the season starts, and today I'm going to do the Atlanta Hawks. So without further ado, let's get into it. The Atlanta Hawks acquired Tony Snell by trade from Detroit. They drafted Onyeka Okongwu 6th overall and Skylar Mays 50th overall. They signed free agents like Chris Dunn, Danilo Gallinari, Solomon Hill, Nathan Knight, Rajon Rondo, and Bogdan Bogdanovic. Leaving them in free agency is DeAndre Bembry to Toronto, Charles Brown, who hasn't been signed, Vince Carter, who retired, Dwayne Dedmon, who was traded then waived, Trevon Graham, who signed with Milwaukee, Damian Jones, who signed with Phoenix, Skal Labissiere, who still hasn't been signed, and Jeff Teague, who signed with Boston. So their roster has 17 players on it, and it is Bogdan Bogdanovic, Clint Capella, Jonathan Collins, Chris Dunn, Bruno Fernando, Danilo Gallinari, Brandon Goodwin, Solomon Hill, Kevin Huerter, DeAndre Hunter, Nathan Knight, Skylar Mays, Onyeka Okongwu, Cam Reddish, Rajon Rondo, Tony Snell, and Trae Young. So let's start breaking it down. So the only player they acquired by trade is Tony Snell. I like Tony Snell. He's kind of one of those nothing players in a sense. It's like he's a good rotation player. He shoots and plays defense. Those are his best two attributes, and those are honestly the most important attributes for a role player. So I like him. I like his defense on this team, especially because I'll get into it later, but this team does have a little bit of roster issues. So then their draft picks, Onyeka Okongwu and Skylar Mays. I don't know a lot about Skylar Mays. He was the 50th pick overall, but Onyeka Okongwu I really like. He's a switchable big. He's a little bit raw on both ends, really. He's more of a defensive center, I'd say. So it's kind of weird that they drafted him while also having Clint Capella. They're very similar in the sense where their offensive games aren't very advanced. They are mostly lob threats and around the rim guys. They don't really have a lot of moves, and neither of them are really shooters. Maybe Onyeka could grow into that, but as of right now, he's not. So he will be probably just their backup big man and probably just an eventual replacement for Clint Capella. But I like him overall. And the free agents they signed, so they have a lot. They probably signed the most I think they signed the most free agents this year. They had the most turnover probably from the 2019-2020 to 2020-2021 season. So they signed Chris Dunn, who was picked 3rd overall, I believe, in the or 4th overall in the Ben Simmons draft. And he's been a bit of a disappointment just because he hasn't been a star and he was picked that early, but I really like him. He's very good defensively, and next to Trae Young, that could be something really useful for them. So I like the signing. He's not much offensively. He has a little bit of ball handling and passing ability, but not much scoring the ball. But defensively, he's an asset. Danilo Gallinari signed from Oklahoma City, and he's very good. I really like Danilo Gallinari. He has had some injury issues in the past, so I wouldn't say like injury issues. He just has trouble playing the whole season. Like he gets a little injuries. So that's a little concerning, especially with his age. But as long as he plays, I think Danilo Gallinari is one of the best scorers in the league. Honestly, he's just he can score on all 3 levels. He has very good size. He can take on bigger guys and smaller guys because he's able to back you down if you're smaller, or dribble past you if you're bigger. So I really like Danilo, and he's a great shooter. Shot 40% on like 7 attempts this year. Solomon Hill, that's probably just a locker room guy. He's not much actually on the court anymore. Maybe a little defense, tiny bit of shooting, but I don't think he's going to see that much time playing. I think this is more of like a culture fit guy. Nathan Knight, I know nothing about him. He was undrafted. And Rajon Rondo. Rajon Rondo, he's on this team for a very specific reason. A lot of people have been saying you need to get the ball to Trae Young's hands to maximize him as a shooter, which I agree with, but it is also tough because I just don't know the kind of impact Rajon Rondo is going to make on this team. Rajon Rondo is at a point of his career where we've seen it. He's still a great player. Don't get me wrong. But he's not going to do it for 82 games. It's been shown for the past, honestly, like 4 seasons. Ever since back with the Pelicans, we saw it. When he was on the Pelicans and Pelicans made that run, he didn't turn it up until they had to. Like when they made their playoff push, and in the playoffs he played well. And for the Lakers, people talked about how bad he was during the regular season. Like people are saying, is he even going to get minutes in the playoffs? Then in the playoffs, he's literally the third best player. So I still think he has value. I just think on a team like this, it's tough because they're going to ask him to do what he did in that Lakers run, but for 82 games, and I just don't see him doing that. And then, so looking at their current roster, Bogdan Bogdanovic is the other signing, big signing. So we all know about the Milwaukee mishap, how they weren't able, there's a lot of things. People say that it was because they tried to confirm the sign and trade too early before you were even allowed to do so. So that might have been the reason, but I also heard it was because they weren't able to offer him as much money as like Atlanta Hawks obviously could offer them. It was like $4 million short per year, and if they would have been able to offer him that much, this is what I heard this on the Rosillo pod. This was his agent saying this. If they were able to offer him the full max, then he would have signed at Milwaukee. So who knows what was really the reason? I think it was a combination of the two, but the Hawks got him. I think he's a good player, and I think offensively he fits really well next to Trae Young. I think he's a good secondary ball handler, a good shooter off ball, can do some on ball, and I like him as the second scorer next to Trae Young. I think he is a good fit there. But overall, I think this team is going to struggle a little bit. The fit isn't great when you look at this team. So the only problem I see is they signed, their big signings were Bogdan Bogdanovic and Danilo Gallinari, obviously. But they are both in positions that, I mean, Bogdan is definitely, he's going to start. But it's tough. You don't really know where to start him because you also signed Rajon. So it's like, I don't know what their starting lineup's going to be. It's definitely Trae Young, definitely Clint Capella, and then it's Bogdan, Danilo, and John Collins. Is that really what because defensively, that's just terrible. Or maybe you throw out, but then Rajon's coming off the bench as well. So maybe it's Trae Young, Rajon, Bogdan at the 3, John Collins or Danilo at the 4, and then Clint Capella at the 5, but then you're having Danilo or John Collins come off the bench, and still defensively you are very bad, and you'd like to get someone like DeAndre Hunter in there, or Tony Snell, who's more of a defensive wing, just so Clint Capella isn't on an island as the only above-average defender on that team. But you can't really put either of those guys in without taking out a really good offensive player like John Collins, Bogdan, or Danilo. Those 3 guys are going to want to play, but defensively next to Trae Young, they're going to struggle. And Rajon's going to want to play too. So it's going to be a little fit problem. Same with Chris Dunn. It's like, I just don't know how this team is going to balance defense and offense with their 5-man lineups, because they just don't have a good 5-man lineup that has offense and defense. So that's where I have issues with this team. I don't see them as a playoff team in the East. I know that sounds crazy, but the East has 8 teams right now that I think are pretty much locked in. They have the Milwaukee Bucks, the Miami Heat, Indiana Pacers, Boston Celtics, Toronto Raptors, the 76ers, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Washington Wizards, now with Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal. Not to mention the Orlando Magic still are trying to make the playoffs, and Atlanta's trying to make the playoffs, of course. Charlotte signed Gordon Hayward, so they're obviously trying to make the playoffs. There's just a lot of teams in the East. Like, surprisingly, a few years ago, it was like if you could just be a slightly above average team, you're going to make the playoffs in the East. Now it's actually kind of competitive. And I think this team is definitely, like, the moves they made, this front office and probably the owners are wanting to make the playoffs this year. So we'll see what happens. If I had to make a guess, I don't think they're going to make it just because their lineup issues. I just think offensively they're going to be great, but defensively they're going to struggle. And whenever they do want to try to play defensively, like putting Chris Dunn and DeAndre Hunter in there or Tony Snell, they're going to lose a lot of offense. So it's going to be a tough balancing act. I think there is a lot of talent on this roster, so I could see them making the playoffs. But if I had to guess, I don't think they will. So that's it for this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe below. Comment what you think they will be this offseason or this upcoming season and what you think their signings are going to be like. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye.